Hello again, my name is Vincent Faney. I am the author of Zen and the Art of Resistance Training, a yogic and scientific approach to weight training. Years ago, I was telling on the previous two videos, this is the third one, to go a little more extensively into the 600-page manual. I'll be going chapter by chapter, trying to keep it down to 15-minute intervals. Now, I've had many people read this book, and I started writing this book, my knowledge, back in 1996. So that's at the behest of my girlfriend, my fiance, at the encouragement. She saw what I was writing. She knew the information I was gathering and researching for years. And I was at a world-class level of strength. Now, I never put anything out because I never got a world record in the bench at the time. Because at my time, back in the 1980s or so, you had guys who were benching far more than what I was doing. But, I didn't realize they were using bench shirts. And then I found out, yes, they're using bench shirts. And since bench shirts only helped me about 20 pounds because I never got used to it, and the bench shirt material that I had gotten was not like the stuff they have now, I just thought that bench shirts only helped only a certain few people. They do give certain people more benefit. But now that I realize that, for the high rep range, the volumes, there wasn't anybody in the world at the time, as far as powerlifters go, that could do the volume and with the different rep ranges that I can do. The guy who could do 700 pounds, he couldn't train with near the volume that I could train with, or the weights. I just put him in the dust. He had other people, and the thing is that there's even questions of whether he could even do what I could do if he didn't have a bench shirt. Because like for instance, there's a guy I know who benches. He's gotten 450. I've done 480, almost 500. He's done 450. He weighs 250 pounds, and he's done 610 pounds in the bench with a shirt. So 450 to 610, that's quite a bit of difference. That's almost, he's working on 200 pounds more with a shirt than on a bench. So quite frankly, what if I would have put 200 pounds more? We're looking at a 700 pound bench. So I'm more of a raw lifter. I believe in lifting without anything but perhaps a belt and knee wraps. Nothing, just to keep the joints stable, nothing to actually assist in the lift. Anyways, that's why I never really promoted myself that much. But when I looked on the charts, and you could look at me in Powerlifting USA, I didn't enter any national meets. I was always wanted to be the Cinderella story who came out of nowhere and have a world's record and everything, And so I didn't want to just compete. Plus, it's expensive, the travel, the time you have to take off, and also, quite frankly, I'm one of those lifters who do better, in a gym than on a meet, because the meets are artificial. You got to kind of cycle. I never really got the hand on how to cycle and get ready for a meet, and some guys do. Some guys are lucky and they happen to finish their body's own natural cycle, and then they just happen to fall right into a meet. Anyways, this is the book that I wrote, and the reason why I decided to write to add this together on my new DVD, I'll be putting in some tutorials and some videos with this, because when I first wrote this book, I didn't have all the software and things that you could add to a book. I was writing a hardbound version, and since I'm not a world record holder in anything except for possibly I could beat the NFL record in the bench press, nobody was going to pick up my book because I'm not Bill Pearl. Again, that was another reason why I wanted to become a world record holder in the bench before I put this book out. But I got into a car accident that kind of put things on the back burner. But I got a lot of friends who said, look, you've documented, you've been able to actually perform at such high levels in various rep ranges. A friend of mine by the name of Cecil Phillips, who met Bill Pearl in the Navy, trained with Bill Pearl, almost lived with Bill Pearl, ran Bill Pearl's gym, and he, basically adopted a lot of Bill Pearl's philosophies. And Cecil was a champion Olympic lifter, power lifter, and bodybuilder in his day. So he was telling me, just put out the book. And so this book is 600 pages. It has broken up into several parts. And the several parts that it's broken up to is, for instance, well, don't want to put that in there, okay. For instance, it's broken up into several parts. Kinesiology section, a section of kinesiology. The one thing that a lot of my friends and I would get, or who should I say, Oh, that's okay. Steve Shipley, who I talked about in the previous section, he's a physical therapist and a power lifter, and he saw, one thing that a lot of us guys who do research, going to college, I'm pursuing a degree in biomedical engineering, and when you go to study, you got to bring out like several textbooks, and they're all around you, and this book is set up better for certain things, the other book's set up better for other things, and basically, it's kind of frustrating. I wanted one book. I wanted everything that I thought to be important in training manuals in one book, and that's why I decided to put together my book. And he was saying, Vince, this book is actually set up in a way that I would prefer. I prefer as both a strength athlete and a physical therapist. So he really was impressed with the book, with the pictures and all the things that I had to set it up. So anyways, we'll cover over certain things. As you can see, this is basically an introduction in the basics of the book, of the chapters. Well, it's a weightlifting and how it relates to both sports and fitness and sports. That's what I cover. Section discussing various types of strength. The mental states, I think your mental state, your value systems even that seemingly outside of the gym, and belief systems and life strategies, depending on all this, they could either enhance or diminish your potential growth in all areas, weightlifting included. So if you are running incongruent in these areas here and are dysfunctional, our biocomputers start bogging down, just like on a computer if you have too many conflicting programs. And so most humans have conflicting programs. And it would seem like that they don't have anything to do with weightlifting, but anything conflicting in your life, even if it seems like it's nothing to do with the gym, can really hold you back. And so that's why I brought sections on that. And a lot of people, I want to bring up the issue of genetics, because a lot of people don't know that genetics and our potential. A lot of people have looked at me and said to me, well, your genetics, you have genetics, that's why you can do this, and I can't because I don't have genetics. So they start with the negative programming. They just say, I can't, I don't have your genetics. That's crap, because we have no way of looking down at our DNA and just have no way of knowing what our potential is, quite frankly. But people assume the worst. They default to the worst and say, I can't. And then they're dead in the water right there. I also mentioned about physics and how it affects lifting. There are many different types of strength. For instance, I may bench 500, and you've got another guy who's benching 300. But there are different ways that he could be actually stronger than me. He could actually be generating more muscular force. And just because a person could not lift as much weight as you, could generate more muscular force. We'll discuss that later. And again, besides the value systems, I want to talk about the mental, physical, and spiritual transcendent states, or transcendent performance. You would transcend previous performance in the mental, physical, and spiritual areas. Spiritual is kind of an odd term. We'll talk more about that. I like to talk about neurological events. Anyways, we'll get back more with that later. And then, of course, there are, we have diet and nutrition. Now, throughout my book, you got a lot of books out there that are really almost copies of other books, but just kind of like formatted a little bit different so it doesn't look like a rip-off of another book. Now, what I've done is I've actually, I first wrote this book just to see how much, just to see what I knew and put it together in a very cohesive fashion. It took me 7 years to put this book together. And then I decided to do research on what people were doing and what their thoughts were, like who even agrees with me. I want to see who agreed with me and who didn't. After my early years, when I called Fred C. Hatfield and I talked to Bruce Wilhelm, former world or American champion and heavyweight champion, super heavy and Olympic lifting, and Fred Hatfield, a world champion in the squat, world champion in many different weight classes. They basically gave me workout programs, and I didn't understand them. They didn't work for me at the time. They were limited. They had their own pitfalls, and so I thought that program was genetics. And for me, I recognized I needed to do different rep ranges. So everything I talk about in here this book is a standalone on itself, mainly because I take the different programs. One of the reasons I take the different training strength programs and so forth, and I do it to critique And whenever I've written on somebody's stuff and said this is what is good, this is bad, I give them credit. This is so and so believes in this program. This is so and so here believes in this program, and so forth. And I had the audacity to examine their program, see how it compared to what I was doing, see if I could learn anything from what they were teaching, and I did a critique, the strength and weaknesses of each program, and then I would add on to the back, if I was to take any part of this program or that program, I would add this in, or if I was to change it, I would do this program the way they said here, here, and here, but then I would like change it here, here, and here. So I had the audacity, and I had the creds, the performance, because and we'll talk more about that later. And so I didn't write a whole book on nutrition. I just gave the very basics of nutrition in my own words after doing research, and then of course I talked about my nutrition, how I related it, and whenever I talk about other people's theories, I say this is so and so's theory. I give them credit, credit. How would you say? If somebody came up with something, and they talked about feast or famine, and it was their research or their program, I'd say I gave credit to the people whose credit was due. So, and I had healthy disagreements with some of these people, even though I think many of them are geniuses. Another thing I want to discuss, I go further and basically talk about energy systems, kinesiology. I have a whole section talking about the various energy systems, because we don't just have one energy system. Now, no matter what weightlifting program you do, or no matter what sport you do, it may put more emphasis on one energy system, but all energy systems are being used. For instance, a marathon runner may be using his oxidative system. That's his primary system he's using. But all these other systems are being used. Even yoga, which are basically pretty still and just concentrating on breathing and meditating, it may work more on one energy system primarily, but all energy systems, none of them are kept totally shut down, and there's a good survival reason for that. I have a section on kinesiology. This is one part that the physical therapist part of my friend, the lifter, the world champion, he liked, because it showed for bodybuilders kinesiology and the exercises and what muscle groups they work and doing this and that, and what accessories and antagonists and agonists and so forth. I have an encyclopedia of exercises listing so many exercises, and they're specifically, like there are, say, several hundred bicep to arm exercises. I have them broken down in, like, these group of bicep exercises work the outer bicep, this group of biceps exercises work the inner bicep, this group works lower, this group, so forth and so on, because I had a segment, for people who want to work more on the deficient part of their bicep. They don't have to just struggle and just go through a whole bunch of stuff. They can go, for different leverage reasons and so forth, this is the group that will work in a specific area of this chest, this bicep, and so forth. And I have a section for various different exercise routines for people to try out. Lifting charts. A lot of people are interested in lifting charts. If they want to know that I do 10 reps for this, what's my 1 rep max going to be? If I do 25 reps, what's my 1 rep max going to be? A lot of people want to know, if I do max out and do 1 rep for this, what can I do for 25 reps? So I put in lifting charts that are standardized, and so I think basically I don't do well with lifting charts. I just don't follow a lifting chart. My body does not go by. There's no prediction. They don't work for me. They work for a lot of other people, but it's not just how many pounds. It's not just, with some people, the difference of what you could do. For me, if I do X amount of weight on the bench and I'm working my behind and necks 100%, then my behind and necks are going to be X amount of pounds consistently behind my bench if I'm doing everything. If I ignore my behind and necks, I'm doing benching, then there's a bigger lag. But if I'm doing everything evenly, even rotating, even if some days I put more emphasis on my deep, benching and other days my chest, there's a gap, predictable amount of weight. And it differs between different people because of the leverages. And on percentages, there's no percentage thing for me. It's how many, if I do X amount of reps here with this weight, and I'm doing all things created equal, I'll do roughly this amount of weight, and it's not a percentage thing for me. So that's why you got to be careful. And a lot of people fall into that category. That's why charts don't work for everybody, but they're nice to have. I talk about various weekly training routines and bring that in. I discuss a lot of a section on techniques, mind-body techniques, transcendental meditation, self-hypnosis, visualization, lucid dreaming, all this stuff different Eastern, Western mind techniques for merging the mind, body, and spirit. And again, the spirit, mystical events, is something that I like it. I'm not too uncomfortable with it. I got friends who are scientists who are not very who are a little uncomfortable with it. But basically, I prefer neurological event when I talk about stuff like that. Anyways, I told people that before I started learning this that I was very non-athletic before I started lifting weights. I wasn't weak. You know, some would argue I had a decent amount of strength, but you know, I just couldn't get through. I mean, I just was a bad eye-hand coordination because I was at the time almost blind, you know, and so I would just people would rather get rid of Bo Jackson and O.J. Simpson, and if they would take me because I was such a handicap. Now, physical size, I learned does not always translate to appropriate strength. I learned that when I was a wrestler, and I really we'll go more into that later. I believe that persons who are big, as you get bigger, you should get a corresponding strength. Your strength ratio should go up correspondingly. Now we have weight. I talk about weightlifting, how it relates to both fitness and sports, and how sports. You know, I compare different sports of each other, which is the most effective for cardio, for speed, for endurance, for strength. You know, this and that, and why weightlifting is the most effective, except for a few sports. But also, weightlifting could provide a way to stimulate all your energy system, which there's not really any other sports that could do that, and if they can, only to a limited degree. And now I have a section discussing various types of strength, because they have static strength, speed strength, power, all sorts of things, and most people need to understand that. These are things that people don't even think about, and that's why their gains are pretty limited. So basically, I talk about mental states, value systems, our belief systems, life strategies that either enhance or diminish our potential growth. Talked about that before. So let's see. I'm going to try this here. I'm just learning this program, as you can see. Okay. Or diminish. There we go. Or diminish potential growth. Genetics and our potential. We talked about that and so forth and so on. When talk about spiritual transcendence, mystical events. You know, years ago I was interested, before I started weightlifting, taking yoga. I always wanted to have these mystical events and travel time and space with my consciousness. And there's a lot of exciting things by both quantum physicists and psychologists and cognitive behaviorists and all sorts of people. The question of consciousness and what it is, very elusive. Nobody really knows what consciousness is. You know, and even what intelligence is. And although we can measure various forms of intelligence. And so we want to figure out what the heck's going on, and there's a lot of people that even wonder, you know, is our consciousness totally intertwined with the quantum field or the universe? Certainly, there are scientists, quantum physicists know that our consciousness can influence a particle, how it's going to behave, and so forth, which is kind of exciting to me. I mean, if we could do that, what can we influence in our own bodies? Maybe this is what Jesus and many spiritual leaders are going to say. Now, the word spiritual is kind of, a lot of people are uncomfortable with that. I'm not entirely uncomfortable with that, but I prefer when you have a mystical event to where you feel like you're transcending time and space, going to another dimension, having a dream state that's just as sensory rich as the world around you now. I call that neurological event. And you got to be careful, because sometimes some things that people call transcendence and out-of-the-body experience, sometimes it could be a hallucination, a temporal lobe epilepsy, something like that. And sometimes I think there might be bona fide experiences. Now, Dr. Lee Salinas, a great neurologist, he believed the same thing. You got to be very careful in what's what, because you don't want to be inducing transcendental states in somebody who's schizophrenic or mentally ill. certainly don't want to have somebody like me pushing you to think it, trying to encourage anything. I'm just saying, just to keep an open mind. And I've written about this certain experiences that I had, not while I'm driving a car or somewhere else, but when I'm meditating, that are like powerful sensory rich seeming experiences, and I totally attribute those experiences to my how much I stimulate all the energy systems of my body, not just one, but all of them to the nth degree, and which stimulates the brain, which causes, I say, neurological events, and it was during these events that I noticed an augmentation where if I was hitting a wall in weightlifting, it would actually go for I would have that next jump in evolution physically. My training would take on new vigor. So that's why I will entertain. I'm not saying I believe in this 100%. I entertain the possibility, okay? And that's what I think we want to keep an open mind. Now, we don't want our mind leaking all over the place, and just, you don't want to assume this, but let's keep an open mind about this. Anyways, basically almost done. So anyways, I got the forward, talking about my, it allow you to, instead of just highlighting, you will have this on file on the, on the DVD. So some people like to read the whole thing, and I have all sorts of quotes that come in throughout the book. And I have all these chapters talking about different things, and we'll talk about this in the next video because I'm running out of time, and we don't want to run out of time. So as you can see, a lot of exercises, have a lot of pictures. We're going through this really quick, and we'll go back later to go cover this a little more, so we can cover chapters one by one, and then talk about why I wrote the book and so forth. Anyways, thanks for now, and I'll talk to you later.